back. Mega Brand. Let's go, go. This is mutant music, spark the revolution to this. This is mutant music, X-Men, yes, it is destined. This is mutant music, spark the revolution to this. This is mutant movement music, X-Men, yes, we elect. Yo. X-Men 97 revisits the iconic era of the 90s as the X-Men, a band of mutants who use their uncanny gifts to protect the world that hates and fears them, are challenged like never before, forced to face a dangerous and unexpected new future.
The X-Pod 97 will track those adventures weekly. To you, your X-Pod.
Yeah, and we're back. It's episode 6. We are back in the mix. We're caught up. We took some vacations. We took some travels. We took some trips. And we are back and caught up. We have just watched episode 6, which for this one, I'm going to call Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Because it's kind of what it felt like for me. This felt like somebody bringing home somebody that the fam does not approve of, and then things got crazy. So you know,
that's a good description.
There's layers, you know, saying to these episodes, and I believe that is very intentional. But you know, as always, my name is Mega Ran, and I'm here with my co-host, with the co-most, Marcos. What's going on, bro?
Not much, man. We're back in the saddle. It's a normal week. You know, I'm just trying out my new glasses, guys. You know,
can you see? Can you see?
I can see. I can read. I can do everything. I see somebody right above me. Somebody cool.
There is somebody above. I'm gonna call you Jorge LaForge today.
Oh my God. You know what? It's all right, man.
But we do have a guest, and he is to my left, your right. You might know him, or you would definitely know this man's work. This is Mikaze, a good friend of ours, who is, among other things, a pro wrestling gear maker, sneaker designer, ramen fiend, and a lover of a good time and good X-Men, just like us. Mikaze, how you doing, sir?
Hey, man, chilling. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be hanging out with the homies. You know, last time we all hung out, didn't end too well for me. So,
hey,
you know,
it started off great though. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
We had a blast, man. We really did. I will highly recommend going to Universal and with nothing but adults. That's all I'll say. No kids. And just spending the whole day in the heat with beverages. And
oh my God.
I highly recommend it. It's a fun time.
You learn a lot about yourself in a situation like that.
Yeah. Apparently I don't like, you know, the Jason Bourne show that much when I'm, you know, inebriated. So
oh man, you was giving that. I never see anybody heckle a show so badly, but you know what? It's all good. It was so much fun, so many memories. Now tell us, speaking of memories, before we jump into it, Mikaze, what is your original kind of memory and relationship with the old X-Men series? Have you been into the comics? And so far, what do you think of X-Men 97?
So I mean, with the X-Men are like OG comic book, like, you know, heroes to me. Those are the ones that I kind of gravitated towards when I was younger. Just the stories. I like the idea, like all the different characters that would come about. They were super flashy looking, you know. So you always got a good group of characters on screen, and they always they just had different looks to them, which always, you know, registered with me very well. And then the older cartoon was one of my favorite cartoons of all time. You know, that first episode when Morph gets nuked is just that's like what is it called? That's like a canon event for me.
Yes,
So,
that's like the moment
shot.
Yeah. Like it's because to me it's the first time where you really saw, like, in something that was made for kids, where like some crazy shit could happen in the first episode, you know?
Yeah, that's true, man. I remember thinking that too. We were just like, man, who's this Morph dude? And then like all of a sudden it just gets wild. You're like, oh, all right, well, peace out.
Exactly.
We barely knew you, but you know, so
so when the new show started, you know, I was wondering if it was going to capture the same feel, and I gotta say it's right on par. Like it's continuing off exactly where my emotions felt when I last watched.
I sent Ran a meme that encompasses how I feel about the X-Men 97. And it's like a picture of Zach from when he was in the Power Rangers. His hairline is jacked up, but then X-Men 97, his hairline is perfect with the little swoop in the back. That's how I feel X-Men 97 is. It's like it was good, but now we know how to
now that we know what to do, it's perfect. And
Oh man,
I agree.
Zach's hairline looked like the St. Louis Arch.
Yo.
Oh man.
Shout out to Zach, man.
Yeah.
Shout out to Zach. He was
we hopefully are going to see him in a couple weeks.
Yeah, man. I've seen him at a bunch of cons. He's a real cool guy, man. Like he's the best. Like if you're going to be set up at a convention, he's by far the best person to be sitting next to because he'll play like R&B music and like he'll play the jams and just be up there just grooving while he's like taking pictures with people in between. He's dancing. He'll just start busting out kid and play maneuvers. And
he starts doing the Black Ranger kata.
Yo, Zach don't crack. Hashtag Zach don't crack. He still looks great. Shout out to my man.
Yeah. Hey, did you guys catch episode 5 during Mania week, or did you guys had to wait till you guys got back?
I watched it on the plane. I kind of dozed off. Then I watched it again when I first landed. I think, like, man, I was so obsessed. Like, I had to get to it. So I think it was like in the Uber. I was watching it, like pieces of it. I caught 10 minutes here, then another 10 minutes, and another 10 when I got to the room. But I had to catch it because we didn't get the pod on time. So we've been playing catch up ever since.
I mean, I was knee deep in work, you know, during that week. So when I finally got home on Tuesday, I was finally able to sit down and watch it. And
man. So we just to give an example of how busy your schedule is. You sent me a text, and this sounds like, as the kids say, cappuccino, because this sounds so ridiculous. It sounds like cap. You said on Friday, I didn't go to bed until 6:45 a.m. And then I was back up at 8.
That was Saturday.
Saturday. Okay. So yeah. So now that turns into 6:45 a.m. Saturday. Yep. And I was back up at 8 to go to the stadium. The stadium being Lincoln Financial Field for WrestleMania 40. For real? Like is that real?
Yeah, because I had to work. I worked SmackDown, SmackDown Hall of Fame. And I got done there, went back to the hotel, went back to the sewing room, kept sewing till about 6:45 a.m. Woke up at 8, had to go downstairs, unload some, and pack up some equipment, bring it to the stadium. Went and worked night 1, came back to the hotel, and then worked again. Went to the sewing room, worked again till about 4, and then was back up at 9:30 to go get ready for night 2.
Holy crap, dude.
Now
that sounds crazy.
I got a question. Is this the expectation or is this your work ethic?
Kind of both. Like, I mean, on Mania Day, it's just things they come last minute sometimes.
Okay.
And you want to come through as much as possible because it's the biggest show of the year. So, this year we've had a lot of big shows leading up to it. So we didn't get, I usually start after Royal Rumble. I started working on Mania stuff. But this time, we had Perth and all that stuff. So I didn't, I lost about a month worth of time to work because I had to take care of that. And vice versa. We used to get ready for one night. Now it's 2. So now you got double the amount of people. So,
yeah.
Wow.
Well, as a fan and as a friend, I appreciate every second you put into your work because it shows.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, y'all killed it, man. Shout out to you. Shout out to Jolene, the whole squad over there, killing it with amazing ideas and costumes and making it come to life, man. And so I enjoy it. So I will say Mikaze is a heck of a follow. So please make sure you are following him on all socials. I am Mikaze.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you don't mind, let's get into this X-Men.
All right.
Here we are. Episode 6 is going down. Now, after I can say without, exaggerating, one of the most shocking episodes in probably the history of animation happened in episode 5. I'm gonna give it.
They still haven't given us confirmation yet. They kind of
it's comics. We don't. Nothing's confirmed.
But they're like, we'll let you know when we feel like it.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
No, but
So
to me, it was one of those. It was one of those moments that it equates to Aaron's mom getting chewed up in Attack on Titan in the first episode.
yeah,
But
Yep.
we have all this history of remembering the old cartoon
Yep.
behind
yeah.
that moment. So it's
Yeah, you can't like you take out one of the original squad that you've been growing up on, it hits
mhm.
different. So absolutely hit hard. So after that, I feel like you need a kind of a cool down episode for
A
sure.
palate cleanser.
Like
Huh.
things got wild. So we kind of got that. I feel like there wasn't a ton of over the top action. Probably at the very beginning was the most action we really saw. But it was time to get some answers in episode 6. So I'm going to give you the episode description. This is Life Death Part 2. Now, we talked earlier, and hopefully you are subscribed and heard some earlier episodes. We talked about how Life Death Part 1 felt like it was a little short, maybe a little more serious than what the maybe 10 or 12 minutes they gave it kind of required. But I think they did okay with giving us most of this episode to kind of pull that story together. So here it is. But then we get a whole new one too. This could have been a slash episode as well, because there's literally 2 stories happening. But during the Kree-Shi'ar War, Lilandra announces her engagement to Professor Xavier. Refusing to accept her sister marrying a Terran, Deathbird invokes the right of Mdasha, challenging Xavier to purge all his memories of Earth to prove his loyalty to the Shi'ar Empire. Xavier's refusal to renounce his memories results in a battle between the Royal Guard and Deathbird's supporters until Xavier pulls everyone into the astral plane to educate them on coexistence. Upon receiving a psychic vision of Gambit's death, Xavier calls off the engagement and requests that he be returned to Earth as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in Arizona, Storm and Forge share a rare cactus to cure Forge of the poison from the adversary's bite. Storm finds the cactus in a cave, but when she is cornered by the adversary, she overcomes her fears and regains her powers to fly. Shortly after returning home, they turn on the TV and they realize everything's effed up. And it turns out that Mr. Sinister is a big part of the plan to instigate a war between humans and mutants. All right, that is episode 6. Now, I want to get into a few of my notes. Number 1, I always say you must watch the introduction to the show. It's so key. Do not skip. I don't even trust people who hit skip on this show. Real talk, because the music, the vibes, it gets you in that moment.
Yeah.
So, did anybody notice anything cool or different in this intro?
I sure did. First of all, there was a very key removal. Gambit is not a part of it.
Yeah.
And then they add my man Nightcrawler into it, like if he was there the entire time. Like if my man had a graphic already, like to use of our other worlds wrestling, it's like they already had the graphic queued up. They're like, all right, we're gonna boop. He's right here.
It's always like, in wrestling, and we can equate everything to wrestling. When a person appears that used to be in another show or another company, we always wonder, like, what are they gonna call them? Are they gonna keep the same name? Are they gonna be like, that's then they were like, Nightcrawler, and he was there, and he had a graphic, he had his little logo, and it was
like
it was
my
good
man
to
was
see him.
ready.
Because he had like a super minor part in the last episode, which I honestly wanted more, but he actually had a really good redemption at the end. So it's good to see him officially part of the team. I picked that up from the intro. Was there anything else? Stuff be happening so fast. If y'all caught something, please let me know.
Well, they also had I think it was they had a little bit with Cable. I think he was fighting
Nimrod.
Nimrod.
No. Apocalypse. He was shooting Apocalypse again.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so that was
Nimrod.
in the last one as well. That was in 5 and 6.
Yeah.
But they added them again, and then Nimrod was again shown with Bishop, which kind of leads me to believe that they're going to start doing the Days of Future Past again, like they did in the original show, but a little bit more expanded.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings in both, the past and the future,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
I guess I can see them going in that direction because it's going to allow for different like story arcs for like Scott and all that stuff, like taking them in a direction that we would not expect. But then you can also retrofit it when you go through Days of Futures Past. So
yes, I think that's going to happen a lot. We're going to go back and forth and move some things around. One thing that didn't really get moved around, but kind of got explained. I don't know if y'all remember the very final episode of the animated series is where Professor Xavier dies. And at this point in the when he's gone, Lilandra takes him and says, yo, like, we're gonna take him off to another world. And he's going to his home planet. We'll see him maybe. And he's been gone, but we find out that he's been having an otherworldly love has been building.
First of all, that otherworldly love, like my man has been chilling. Just like I know he just got the second vision, but he's like, they be all right. Like no explanation, no nothing. Like
they be all right.
They're like mourning his death. He's out there chilling and setting the vibe, talking about like, hey girl, you know, in my world, we go away and have fun on our honeymoon.
Right.
Like this episode gave me like horny vibes. Like him and Forge were
Professor
like trying so hard.
They were spitting game at their women. I was just like, oh man, these guys got some keyed up, phrases for these women.
If anybody got game, it's Charles, who can literally get in your head and say exactly what you want to hear. So if anybody got game,
both of them were like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but like, hey, why don't we just kick back? Like, we ain't even got to talk about nothing. Like,
right? Like, it's just me and you, baby. Ain't no worry about what's happening over there. I'm worried about you.
They should have animated Forge's face when he turned on the news and he saw like all disappointed, like, like I had my shot.
Here we go. Back to this again, man. So I think, and I've heard some people mention some things that I hope doesn't really come true, because I do like Forge as a character, but I feel like people are kind of plotting that maybe Forge is not what he seems, at least at this point, that he might have something to do with what's going on the other side, because he's got inside information, as he literally like built the freaking, cannon that can take away their powers. So if anybody can help, or at least, knows enough to help, probably be Forge. But back to Charles and Lilandra. So Charles starting a whole, not just family beef, because, Sister Deathbird is like, we don't trust you. And then it gets real deep, and there's some coded language in here, and I think it's very intentional. When she says things like, you want so basically they get into an argument where Xavier wants the capital of their new kingdom to be on Earth. And they're like, oh, of course you would want us to go to Earth. And Lilandra's like, man, Earth people stink. Basically, like, y'all trash. Like, why would I want to go hang with y'all? She said, Milky Way ghetto. I don't want to go to your Milky Way ghetto and be around your inferior freak fluids. And I was like, yo.
I think whoever wrote Milky Way ghetto, I think they had to chuckle. After they wrote that, they had to be chuckling. Like,
the chuckle. There's a lot of stuff where I was like, okay, all right, they knew what they was doing. There's actually a part where Professor says something that is not a 1997 piece of dialogue, where he said, "You saying the quiet part out loud."
Yeah.
It's like, all right, okay. They decided to pull some current slang into it, but yeah, we're in an issue now where Professor is coming in trying to kind of change the game, because he wants to keep an eye on his people. But how long has that been an issue? Like, you know what I'm saying? We don't know how much time has passed between episode 1 and episode 5, but did Charles care then? Like, a lot's been going on. Like, first, I'm gonna put your ops in charge. I'm gonna put your ops in charge of y'all, and then I'm gonna go off and go Mac.
It's like when we first got the series, the retelling or the continuation, we were kind of under the impression that, Charles didn't really have time to plan this. He kind of like did his will, and it was like, this is his will. But then it's like revealed that this was all intentional, and your man just like dipped out. He was like, all right, I'm a ruffle some feathers and then keep it pushing. Like,
he went for a pack of smokes and did not return.
But it's like, okay. He basically left the kid with the grandma, so he can go, chase whatever dreams he's got. But he's like, my intention's to come back.
All due
Mm.
respect, Mikaze, I think he left the kids with the grandfather that didn't like your side of the family, that doesn't really rock with you, and then left all the money and be like, "You figure this out." It's
I,
like, what?
He
I don't
was
know if
like,
it's the
I'm out.
grandfather that don't rock with you, but it's the grandfather that probably had like he was like, he was teaching by force.
Yeah,
He's a
Yeah,
tough love grandfather.
the tough love grandfather. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
like yeah, that. But I don't know, man. Like it took a second for us to realize that Magneto had a heart of gold. The
Yeah.
man was just rough edges. It's like, oh man, like I don't know about this.
I mean, Magneto has come a long way, and he's been repping, like he's been walking the talk. I will
Yeah.
say, it's been really a dope, like not necessarily transformation, but just more of like an evolution to see in Magneto, where he's holding it down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But there's so many great pieces of dialogue in this. I had to write down how Lalandra was like, "Yo, you'll just play the role of the peacemaker because that's what leaders do," and
Mhm.
and I was like, message, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of these in here where they're just like, this is a direct reflection of the society. And but they're able to use mutants, they're able to use aliens and other stuff to really drive real points home. And
Yeah.
so I love where they get into a literal classroom where Charles has to teach them about being a leader and about how to coexist and things like
Yeah.
that. And he said coexistence is messy,
Yeah.
and
That
it's
was one
and
of
it's
her
However,
lines.
and
That was
I
one of
dug
her
that.
lines.
it
I
was
dug that.
hokey. It was hokey, but in a good way.
It
Like
was
I'm
hokey.
like my man, and then the apple, and then he's like, "Shut up and sit down," and like, but he did it. But it's like the entire time I was watching these scenes, I couldn't help to think like, if I was the other characters, what kind of emotional roller coaster would I have when he comes back? Because that's where they're going to lead to. Like, if you
Mhm,
think about it, like everybody's going to feel betrayed. Everybody's going to have their feelings. Number one, Scott is going to be like, "Why didn't you pick me to be the leader?" Number
mhm,
two, Magneto is going to be like, "Why would you want me to radically change who I am in order to fulfill the promise that I made to you in death?" And then it's like all the abandonment issues that they're gonna have. Like, don't get me wrong, they're not. Hopefully, they won't address this in the heat of battle, which I doubt. But like that X mention is gonna be real weird after they save the world. It's gonna be like this guy.
We gotta have some. Yeah, we're gonna have to have some real heart to hearts, or maybe get in the danger room and work it out. Because
Or
like somebody need 5 minutes with the professor. You know what I
and
mean? Like,
and
But I mean, I think it's a callback to what Magneto said in the first episode, where he was, second episode, where he was saying that, like, finally, you guys realize what I've realized all along, that Charles Xavier can make mistakes.
mm,
And I think it's given us a fully formed idea of who Charles Xavier really is. Like, I think with the original series, he kind of was almost like, I don't want to say Christ-like, but he could almost do no wrong. And in
yeah,
this one, you're seeing that, like, he's just as great of a character as he is. He's also still, this is his human side.
he's
That,
flawed.
yeah,
I like that, and that's like a theme of the whole thing, pretty much. From
mhm,
Cyclops, from Professor on down. Like last episode, we saw Cyclops flip. Where
yeah,
he finally he had enough. He's dealing with a lot. Like he's telepathically cheating.
yeah,
You know what I mean? You got so much going on where everybody is human, and so that actually leads me to the other story, the other part of life death, which is Storm's story.
yeah,
And basically the adversary, which I didn't know much about the adversary as an enemy, but I
yeah,
thought like this is dope, and it's very similar to Mr. Sinister or Loki being
yeah,
like a trickster who feeds on your fears, your doubts, your different idiosyncrasies that and the things you might say out loud. And she said, like, kind of in confidence to Jean, like, man, I wish I was human,
yeah,
and how
mhm,
that little thing is what sent her down this path. It's like, well, you wanted it. Here you are. You've been scared of your powers. You've been scared of who you are. Now you regular degular.
Well,
but
so here's the thing with the adversary. I almost didn't like that it was an actual, like, physical being,
Mm,
because I was kind of hoping that, like, by the end of it, by the time Storm goes through her story arc a little bit, we get to see that it's almost like a dream sequence, or you got to go out into the desert to find yourself, And like this is just her, it's almost like psychological, it's all just coming ahead in her brain, and this is maybe something that was put forth by Forge out in the desert that really, you know, brought that out of her.
Okay, but wait, there's something that I picked up on after one. I don't know. I was texting while something was happening in the show, so I rewinded it,
Yep.
and then I was like, wait a minute, maybe. So here's something that I picked up: is that the adversary? You know who voices the adversary?
Ooh.
It's the same Storm.
The same lady who voices Storm. So
Okay.
to me, that tells me that the adversary to Forge would have been somebody else. The adversary to me or you would have been it would have been our own voice coming back. So maybe the adversary is in your head. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe.
So here's the thing: the adversary, and they switched it up a little bit with the comics. In the comics, the adversary is physical.
Yeah.
Like, but his powers is on an interpersonal plane, which means he feeds off, he becomes stronger the more you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
So there's two, like, again, this is all just speculation because I'm not part of the writer crew or anything like that. Initially, when she got blasted with the beam did dampen her powers, but the fact that her fears and belief that she'll never get him back is what ultimately blocked them. So she had a Spider-Man 2 moment. Remember in Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire, where he couldn't
He could shoot the webs.
Yeah, he couldn't shoot the webs. It was a mental block in addition to the ray, because she's such a powerful, I think, Omega level mutant that it would hinder her powers, but not completely take them away. They will come back. But because she's such at the point in time, she was so fragile emotionally, is what led to the full thing. And then the attack, it was all real, but most of the effect was psychological. And they proved it because when she got the confidence, she basically took the power away from the adversary, and then but the adversary did actually attack Forge, so that was real. So in my mind, if I didn't know better, if I took away that knowledge, I was really hoping that she would have woken up in that machine that he initially came in, and she was like, "Oh, I'm not cured," and gone to, like you said, like almost like a quest. You know how
like a vision
they
quest.
do. Yes, exactly. When they take a hallucinogen and they have to work it out internally. But
that's kind of when I saw it take the form of like the bird and all that, and I was like, oh, that's what I thought they were going with. But then when you saw that, you know, Forge actually did get attacked, I was like, man, that would have been cooler if it was.
Yeah, I think that would have been a lot more interesting to make it be the Vision Quest angle of it, for sure.
I do say all I kept hearing in my mind when she transformed into the classic costume was "Remember who you are" from Black Panther 2 or 1. I forgot, but
was that one?
All I kept hearing was Angela Bassett in my mind, like "Remember who you are" when she first came out. I was like, yeah. But, that was just me internally.
So I like that, you know, we get to a point where Forge gets to save Storm, you know, from the attack using some Doctor Strange like magic, which maybe they'll explain at some point. But I mean, the rings, the book, like everything looked very Doctor Strange, and I'm sure that was intentional. And I didn't really know the full extent of Forge's powers, but I mean, I guess anybody could pick up a book.
He was using his mom's magic because apparently he is, you know, Native American. And I think they called it I want to say tree magic or something. It was something like they had the concept, they said it, but they like flew through it. They were like, "Oh yeah, my mom used to do this. Let me see if I can do it." They used that book as the MacGuffin pretty much to get to answer all their problems, you know?
Yeah, because he did say that, like, at least I think some of the magic, like, you know, caught on or something like that.
Okay. Because I was like, wait, I didn't think he had any like magical stuff going on, but he
We all
did
know
when he needed it.
Did you notice that this man had bandages around his metal leg?
Yes.
Yo. I did notice that. That's
maybe he was leaking WD-40, you know? Who knows?
Who wants oil? Who wants an oil spill on their couch, man? Nobody wants that.
First of all, Red, we know that you're based out of Arizona. Is Arizona that crazy, bro? You guys just have
it's crazy.
getting
You know,
attacked.
when they, I don't know, one of those rocks when they went to the snake, whatever rock, I was like, oh, that definitely looks like something I passed on the highway. Like, so that, that was cool. The timeline might be a little crazy where they was like, oh, this is a pre-Civil War, outfit, and it's like, well, maybe, but
Yeah.
America wasn't America then. Arizona
Yeah,
wasn't America during the
Yeah.
time of the Civil War,
yeah.
so a little off there, but
Yeah.
it's okay. I
So you're
think that
saying cartoons are not factual? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what I'm saying. I'm
Okay.
debunking the whole series. Mutants, not real. Sorry to break it to y'all.
I
Not
don't
real.
know, bro. I don't know.
Uh,
I've seen some of these wrestlers do stuff. They might be,
I mean,
Ricochet might be a mutant.
Ricochet is probably a mutant. Let's be real. He's probably a mutant.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going back to Xavier and how they wrap that up, he's in the middle of the class teaching them things, and then a giant Gambit appears.
Yeah.
And I think it was from the moment he saw him, he knew something was wrong. So I was
Yeah.
like, like he's like, what are you doing here? You know what I mean? That kind of
Yeah.
thing. But
Well, because
Gambit was,
he was projected in like the astral plane, right?
yeah. So once
Yeah.
you're there, you're like, wait, what are you? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be here.
Yeah. You're
Something's
only
wrong.
here for one reason. Yeah.
So the Gambit appears larger than life, and I feel like it hit me later, like, oh, maybe was he supposed to be a sentinel in that moment, like showing him what happened to everybody else, being this large destructive sentinel that shoots down, something that can destroy everybody. So it was a quick way to show him a picture of what was happening. And
Yeah.
like you said, Marcos, it's kind of funny or alarming to me that like he never tapped in, the whole like the last month or so, or maybe he did,
Well,
but
because
like
he does
He,
say, he goes, well, you guys were just, like dancing and drinking wine.
yeah, he did say that.
He
He's like,
said, so I
wait,
was like, oh, maybe he was keeping tabs, just kind of mentally keeping tabs on everyone. But
okay,
I want to
but
say he was
yeah,
focused on getting down,
yeah,
like
he was
Forge. He was
he
like,
was at
he's like, they good, they all right. They're like, anyway, so girl, what's up?
but he's got enough mental capacity that where he could be fully focused and just have a piece of his mind being like, they good, right?
Yeah.
And then when it gets danger, which is where it was, so
Yeah.
it almost goes to say like, oh, all those other fights weren't life and death, like it wasn't
Like,
serious, you know what I mean?
You might
That's always
think.
been my issue with comic books, and we talked about it a little bit last year. It's like, or the comic book movies, MCU. It's like there never really feels like there's this super dangerous stakes at like, yo, somebody could die. You know what I mean? Like you never feel that way, and then when you do, like it's very serious. So I kind of felt that way too, where it was like, are you tapped in, or are you just like,
well,
they all right? And
well,
then it's like, oh, they're not all right.
It could have been how like Madeline Pryor was tapping in with Scott while
Mhm.
also being in a meeting. So he
Yeah,
could have just, just in the background, just been mentally checking in on people, but then, just stepping out like, okay, everything's, everything is within their grasp. They can handle it. Nothing's,
yeah,
too crazy. I mean, you imagine a giant sentinel tape wiping out so many mutants, that whole influx of emotions probably coming into Xavier at that time, because he hasn't had to, he hasn't had probably lost that connection to all those mutants at once like that before.
yeah. That was crazy. So overall, I feel like we get to a point where this is just showing how the rest of the world saw what we saw in the previous episode.
Yeah.
So I like it gave it like a bit of a Quentin Tarantino, meanwhile on the other side of the world, this happened, and now hopefully we get to the aftermath in episode 7. And one thing we glossed over it a little bit, but Storm coming back in the classic comic book outfit was dope to see. Her flying over, given that moment where she finally gets to believe in her true self. And then they just had to turn on the TV and see that it's all bad. And now here we are. So before we go on to rating this episode, I
But
want to
we also get the reveal of, when you
that's
see
right.
what's his name,
We get a reveal. We get a Trask.
Trask is
Good
running,
Trask.
and he goes, I gave you my DNA so you could, access Master Mole, and then
And then we got Mr. Sinister. So, and again, I said this early on, and everybody kind of. Well, I don't know if it was everybody. It was just you, Marcos. I said, "Is Mr. Sinister the big bad?" And you were like, "Nah, he's not. He's not really big enough to be a big bad." And
He's
that's
technically still not.
right. Yeah, he's still not like he's not that guy, and he's never been that guy in the comics. So I still feel like there is another layer and another level to who the
Yeah.
big bad is in this show. And for me, I've been constantly, and maybe that's just because of what I think I know about comic books. I'm always like, who's the guy? Who's the mastermind? Who is it? Tell us. And they
Yeah.
haven't yet. And so it makes me believe that that's going to
Or
be
they
like,
have. They giving us little Easter eggs.
we're getting little pieces, but they haven't come out and just said it like it was me, the big reveal. So I feel like that could be saved because this is going to be at least 2 seasons, maybe
Yeah.
even 3, I think.
Yeah.
So they could
I think
totally wait to the end to break it down. But I really hope it's Apocalypse because that's my guy. But I don't know. I wanted to ask, what do y'all think? Like, is there another level, and who is it? If so,
Well,
I'll go with our
I
guest.
can I'm leaning towards Apocalypse being the final, the big bad of this, whatever, storyline. I feel like Sinister is probably occupying the same role that maybe Loki played in the first Avengers movie.
Hmm.
So like he's the big bad of that, of that initial story, but ultimately there's someone else pulling the strings. And it's gotta be Apocalypse at some point. There is a chance they might, go in a different direction with Xavier, and he at some point becomes Onslaught. So
Hmm.
there's, different ways you can go, but I'm leaning towards Apocalypse just because we saw him in the intro. So he's got to show up at some point.
That's true. They did show him. Last week I mentioned Cassandra Nova possibly showing up, but I still haven't seen anything that would lead me to believe that.
Yeah.
So, the fact that they have showed Apocalypse lets me know that he's got to show up at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that. So that about wraps up this episode. So I want to go around the room and get our ratings. We rate these episodes 1 to 10. And just to catch up, we pretty much gave last episode a 10, and we never do that, and we try not to do that, but I just felt like it was just a perfect episode.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that usually means there's nowhere to go but down. But I will digress, and I'll give the floor to our guest, Mikaze. What do you rate episode 6?
For me, I rate it at a 7. I like the progression and showing where, where Charles shows up again, seeing where everybody is at on the other side of the world, amongst all that carnage going on. Um, I I do wish they had gone a little more abstract with how Storm had gotten her powers back. Like I really do wish it was more of a vision quest versus an actual attack, and she actually had to physically save Forge. But yeah, yeah, 7.
Okay. All right. Okay, Marcos. What say you, my friend?
I'm gonna give it a 7.5. I'm kind of leaning the same way. Good progression. I felt like the duality of the story is where it hindered for me. Um, and also, I don't like uh, well, I don't like that we're getting a more flawed Xavier in terms of he's really not thinking. It wasn't until the death that he kind of like was like, wait a minute, I got to go back home. Like he had the ability to go back home whenever. He didn't actually have to leave, but he did.
Hmm.
Um, and the whole Forge thing, I think honestly, like you said, there's something afoot there. I also believe that um they didn't want to flesh out a full episode of the Forge Storm storyline, but I'm glad it wrapped up. But you notice that every time that there's a moral victory, there's always something bad around the corner. I like that this episode set up the table for the rest of the season, and I know that the finale for this season is a 3-parter. So we're gonna get progression to move forward. I think it's gonna be like a full go mode from here on out, and I can't wait.
Word. All right. Well, I'm gonna join the train, and I also will give this a 7. I feel like we didn't necessarily get uh we're not supposed to get any closure per se, but I do feel like the bit of closure we got was a little disappointing. The adversary was cool, but could have been cooler. Sitting in the classroom, a little corny. Um, and just the general, not to say that, everybody shouldn't look perfect or whatever, but I do feel like kind of the exposing the cracks in Professor X, it was a little bit disappointing. And also I just didn't feel like the Forge story they just didn't fully grab me like I
Yeah.
wanted it to. And maybe Forge will have some moments later, but yeah, at least they wrapped it up. And now we get to see what they do now that they know that the entire world has gone to hell. And
Yeah.
so, I'm excited to see what's next, but I do think this is a setup. This is one of those calm before another storm, hopefully. So
Pun intended.
and yeah, but yeah, I say a 7, which is still good, still passing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Still passable. I love it. We got a couple of really good moments in it. I want to shout out, what's my man's name? Gladiator.
Yeah.
Who was like kicking ass. I really dug him. I love that he had no talk. It was just hands. And
Yeah.
like, hey,
And he kind of got along with Xavier. Like, he kind of likes his philosophy. And I'm not going to let this episode end without talking about my man Vulcan. They threw him in there, with Deathbird, aka Cyclops' younger brother. Google him. Pretty
now
good
I
character.
hadn't even caught that. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Now I got to watch it again. I'm sure there's a ton of Easter egg YouTubes out there that are going to pick this episode apart and give you 79,000 things you missed. But for us, though, we give you the juice and nothing but the juice. This has been another episode of XPod 97. I want to thank our guest, Mikaze. Mikaze, please tell the people how to reach you on the socials and what else you got going on.
You can reach me on everything at I am Mikaze. You can find me on my podcast, Sarath and Chris's Movie Therapy Podcast. It's available on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. We just dropped our 78th episode on Monday, which was Marcel. Oh, no, that's next week. We just dropped Mending the Line. Next week, catch us up next week when we talk about Marcel, the shell with shoes on. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Dope. All right. And my name is Megaran, and that's Marcos, and this is XPod 97, which comes to you weekly. Thanks to the good folks at the Geekscape Network. You can go to geekscape.net. You can get this podcast wherever you get podcasts. You know what to do. Give us the 5-star frog splash, all the top reviews. Do everything you can to make sure that we stay in your top 20. Right now, we're holding strong. So on Apple Podcasts, please continue to rate, subscribe, download, and share. I'm going to invoke the right of Mdasha and challenge all of you to do that. And on that note, we up out of here, y'all. Much
Peace.
like, wait, who was out of here? Who got murked in this episode? Nobody really, but I did like how Deathbird stuck the heel in dude's chin early on.
Ronan the Accuser, my man.
Ronan,
he gets all the L's, man. He
love.
went from every single L though. Like, who can we give it to? We got Ronan.
Well, don't be a Ronan, y'all. Catch a W. All right, this is XPod 97, and we are out. Peace.